The bye week came at the perfect time, or did it? That's what you'll hear coming from inside the Steelers locker room. Everyone in that building seems to agree it was a blessing. Rest, recovery, mental reset. All of that. And sure, that makes sense. But let's be honest, there's a real chance that break may have killed some of the best momentum this team has had in years. You don't just bottle up what happened in Dublin and assume you can uncork it again 2 weeks later. That's not how this game works. Now, the Browns come into Acrisure Stadium on Sunday night, and while the spotlight is obviously on the matchup itself, there's a quiet subplot running in the background: travel fatigue. See, Cleveland made the same European trip not long after the Steelers. The difference? Pittsburgh got a bye week immediately after their overseas game. The Browns didn't. They went straight from Heathrow back to work. That's not just a footnote. It's a factor. Not necessarily a decisive one, but something that could tilt the scales in a game where the margins are razor thin. Just look at the Browns game against the Vikings over in London. They fought hard. They kept it close. But when it came down to the final drive, Minnesota's offense, who had been on European soil for a full 2 weeks, picked them apart. Coincidence? Maybe. But fatigue hits hardest in the fourth quarter. Mental sharpness, communication, reactions. That's when it shows. So if you're the Steelers, you absolutely look at that film and take note. Because what's ahead on Sunday is less about what Cleveland brings and more about what Pittsburgh brings back from Dublin. Let's rewind for a second. Over in Europe, the Steelers looked like a completely different team. Not just sharper, but connected, physical, focused. For the first time this season, the offense had rhythm. The defense, attitude. Players who had looked lost earlier in the year found a groove. That's not a coincidence. That's preparation meeting execution. And when you get that kind of cohesion on both sides of the ball, you don't want anything to interrupt it. Not a flight, not a delay, and definitely not a bye week. But that's what happened. Now the challenge isn't just beating the Browns. It's reigniting that spark. Holding on to that version of the team and not slipping back into the disjointed mess we saw during the first 3 weeks. Remember, this team started the season 2-1, but let's not kid ourselves. They didn't play like a team with a winning record. That version of the Steelers wouldn't beat the Browns. That version wouldn't beat anybody who matters. So what needs to happen now? It starts with the coaches. They have to read the temperature of this group. They had a light practice on Monday, then ramped it up heading into game prep. But more important than the schedule is the intent. Stick with what worked. Stick with what won. The same personnel, the same formations, the same emphasis on the run game. Even if it feels predictable, even if it looks conservative on the surface, stick with it. Because if that's your identity, then own it. Let's say, just for the sake of argument, you try to get too cute. Maybe you want to prove that your offensive line doesn't need the same help it did against Minnesota. So you take Darnell Washington off the field. You leave Broderick Jones alone on the left side. And who's waiting for him? Myles Garrett. That's not a matchup you try to test. That's a disaster waiting to happen. Don't fix what isn't broken. Keep the big bodies out there. Stick with the extra blockers. Because here's the thing. This time, you'll have Jaylen Warren fully available. That alone should elevate the run game another level. If you're creating the same lanes up front, Warren is going to find daylight. Now, if there's one area that can afford to evolve a little, it's the passing game. Not a total overhaul, just some growth. In Dublin, every throw felt like it had to be quick. One read, fire it out. Screens, slants, sideline stuff. And yeah, it kept the offense moving, but it also capped the ceiling. At some point, you've got to stretch the field. You got to challenge defenses vertically, or they'll keep sitting on everything short. The Browns are not dumb. Jim Schwartz has seen it all. He's going to stack the box, dare the Steelers to beat them over the top. And if Aaron Rodgers, or whoever is under center, isn't willing to take that shot, then it's going to be a long night. That's where a guy like Jonas Smith needs to come in. He's not getting snaps because of what he can't do. He's being held back by how the Steelers are scheming their blockers. But Smith has that wide receiver build. He can line up anywhere, outside, in the slot, even in the backfield. He's got yards after catch ability. He moves the chains. So if you're missing Calvin Austin, if your WR2 situation is a mess, why not slide Smith into that role? Give the defense something different to think about. You already know Darnell Washington's going to be your blocking tight end. You already know Spencer Anderson is that sixth lineman on the right side. So let Smith be the flex piece. Let him attack the second level, get in space, and force the Browns to cover everyone. Because right now, this team has to make a decision. Do they lean into the physical, smash-mouth style that worked in Dublin? Or do they try to show off something new, something shiny, and risk falling right back into mediocrity? The answer should be obvious. You don't throw away what finally gave your offense some life. You build on it. You evolve it. You keep the foundation and start layering in more weapons. Not at the cost of protection, not at the cost of control, but with balance. And defensively, there's really only one message this week: attack. Go after Dylan Gabriel like your season depends on it, because it kind of does. Look, the kid's been promising. He's also the 900th quarterback Cleveland has trotted out since Tim Couch. That tells you all you need to know about the state of that position. Yes, Gabriel has had flashes. Yes, he's mobile, but he's a third-round rookie. You don't let rookies get comfortable. You hit them. You confuse them. You make them question everything they see pre-snap. Every time he drops back, someone should be in his face. And it's not just him. Quinton Judkins has been building steam in the backfield. Just had a 110-yard game overseas, averaging nearly 5 yards per carry. The Browns are going to feed him. They'll test the Steelers' front early and often. So the mission is clear. Shut that down first. Control the run. Then let the pass rush eat. That formula worked against the Vikings. No reason it can't work again here. The Steelers don't need to reinvent anything this week. They need to replicate. They need to build continuity from what they did overseas and carry it right into their home stadium. The fans will be there. The energy will be there. The test is whether the team can match it, whether they can lock into that same level of urgency and clarity that they found across the Atlantic. Because that version of the Steelers, that team can beat anybody. That team can make noise in the AFC. But they only exist if this group chooses to show up the same way again. And one of the keys to making sure that version of the Steelers actually shows up again is understanding how thin the margins are, especially in this league, and especially in the AFC North. There's no room for slip-ups. You take your foot off the gas for even one game, and suddenly you're looking up at the standings, chasing teams you should have already buried. That's why this game against the Browns is so critical. Not just because it's a division game, but because it's the kind of game that shows whether the Steelers can sustain what they started overseas. Sustaining momentum isn't about hype. It's not about talking a good game in press conferences or saying the right things in the locker room. It's about execution, discipline, repetition. It's about knowing exactly what your identity is and not drifting away from it just because you want to be more explosive or creative. This team found something that worked over there in Europe. The challenge now is not to outsmart themselves, not to try proving a point. Just win. Just dominate the way they did when they took control at the line of scrimmage, dictated tempo, and wore their opponent down across 4 quarters. This goes for the quarterback too. Whether it's Aaron Rodgers under center or someone else, there needs to be patience and poise. There's been too much panic in the pocket early this season. Too many plays rushed. Too many checkdowns that left yards on the field. Part of that is protection, obviously, and part of it is scheme. But another part is trust. Trusting the offensive line. Trusting the receivers. Trusting yourself. In Dublin, you saw signs of that trust coming back. There were moments where Rodgers stood tall, waited, and delivered. Not every time, but enough to believe that maybe he's getting more comfortable in this offense. Now, can that grow? That's the real question. Can the offense take the next step without losing the reliability they found in the run game? Can they continue to keep Rodgers upright long enough to push the ball beyond the sticks? Because that's what separates real contenders from pretenders. The ability to be both physical and dangerous. You can't just be a team that bullies people in the trenches and then fizzles out on 3rd and 7. You have to finish drives. You have to flip the field. You have to make defensive coordinators sweat. And for that to happen, the wide receivers need to step up. That brings us right back to the WR2 conversation. It's been a revolving door behind George Pickens. With Calvin Austin out, it's opened a window, but someone has to take advantage of it. Roman Wilson has flashed some ability. Ben Skoranek can block, but hasn't shown much as a route runner. Scotty Miller brings speed, but hasn't been consistently involved. This is where Jonnu Smith could quietly become the X factor. Not by lining up strictly as a tight end, but by becoming a true hybrid weapon, something that the Steelers haven't really had since Juju was at his peak. Smith has always been tough after the catch. He's a first down machine when used correctly. And more importantly, he gives the offense flexibility. You can put him in motion. You can stack him wide. You can even line him up in the backfield and create mismatches against linebackers. That kind of versatility matters when you're facing a Jim Schwartz defense that's going to disguise coverages and bring pressure from different angles. You need a player who can force the Browns to adjust, not just react. What's also interesting is how Smith's snap count has been so low, even when other offensive weapons have struggled. 16 snaps in Dublin. That's nothing. Meanwhile, Spencer Anderson and Darnell Washington were heavily involved, not just because they can block, but because they fit what the Steelers want to do physically. And that's totally fine. But the moment you start facing teams that can neutralize that power game, or the moment you need to catch up in a 2-minute drill, you're going to need guys like Smith on the field. And speaking of tight ends, where exactly does Pat Freiermuth fit into all of this? That's becoming a real question. Mike Tomlin himself said earlier this week that he doesn't want 250-pound tight ends matched up against edge rushers in 4-3 defenses. That's about as clear a message as you're going to get. He named Freiermuth and Connor Hayward specifically, but noticeably didn't mention Jonnu Smith. That might mean nothing, or it might mean everything. Because let's be honest, Freiermuth is a solid route runner and a decent target in the red zone, but he hasn't been a consistent game changer this year. And if the Steelers are going to move forward with a scheme that leans heavily on physicality and blocking out of tight formations, it's hard to see where he fits without being a liability in protection. That doesn't mean you throw him out of the game plan entirely, but might mean his role shifts. Maybe he becomes more of a situational piece than a staple. And here's where things get really interesting. What happens if this current lineup, Spencer Anderson as the sixth lineman, Washington as the primary tight end, and Smith as a flexible weapon, actually works again this week? What if the Steelers dominate up front, control time of possession, and Rodgers is able to connect on a couple of deep shots? That's when you start building an identity. That's when you stop rotating guys in just because of pedigree or contract, and you start rewarding the ones who produce. Look, football isn't sentimental. This coaching staff knows that. You go with what wins. Period. And right now, the unit that took the field in Dublin played winning football. They were tough, efficient, smart. That's the standard now, not the first 3 weeks. Not the sloppy, inconsistent group that had fans pulling their hair out. This version, the physical, clean, violent version of the Pittsburgh Steelers, that's the one you take into the heart of the schedule. And defensively, you don't change a thing. Attack. Disrupt. Take away the run first, like you did against the Vikings. Because if you let Judkins get to the second level, you're playing from behind all night. But if you shut that down early, you force Cleveland to put the game in the hands of a rookie quarterback. And that's exactly where you want them. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and hit the like button on this video. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments below. The drama that has kept NFL fans on the edge of their seats this offseason might finally be over. Sources close to the team are buzzing that wide receiver Tyler Boyd has made his decision, and Pittsburgh is the destination. According to insiders, Boyd has already reported to the Steelers training facility and has been seen running routes with the team, blending into the squad as if he had been part of the roster all along. While official confirmations remain pending, the chatter around the league suggests this could be one of the most intriguing additions for Pittsburgh in recent memory. Boyd, who has spent the bulk of his career with another franchise, has been the subject of speculation for months. Rumors have swirled about potential landing spots, with multiple teams reportedly vying for his signature. The Steelers, however, appear to have won the sprint, offering him not just a spot on the roster, but a chance to be a central piece in their offensive plans. Fans and analysts alike are already dissecting what this could mean for the team's dynamics, particularly with quarterback play in mind. Boyd's reputation for precise route running, reliable hands, and veteran savvy could inject a new level of consistency to a receiving core that has been searching for a dependable target. Even as excitement builds, some insiders caution that while Boyd's presence in practice is a strong sign, the finer details of his contract and the team's official announcement are still pending. Nevertheless, the Steelers' faithful have already begun envisioning a scenario where Boyd's addition translates into more explosive plays and a deeper threat in the passing game. Teammates have reportedly welcomed him warmly, and the chemistry in drills seems promising. The narrative around Boyd's arrival also fuels speculation about the wider implications for Pittsburgh's offensive strategy. Will Boyd become the primary option, or will he complement the existing core? Early practice observations suggest that the coaching staff is keen to integrate him quickly, possibly hinting at a more aggressive aerial approach in the upcoming season. For now, though, the whispers of Boyd in Pittsburgh have already captured the imagination of fans, media, and rival teams alike. One thing is certain: the offseason rumor mill has found its latest headline, and it has a familiar name: Tyler Boyd. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Pittsburgh Steelers, make sure to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and give this video a like. We always look forward to hearing your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.